On December the 1st, Marneus Calgar leads the Ultramarines in the Sons of Ultramar event. With shiny new golden releases like Trajan and Dante stealing some of his light, why is he still one of my most used characters and easily one of my most loved? Today we'll look at why the Chapter Master of the Ultramarines might still be worth your time and resources. In a recent poll on my channel, you voted Marneus Calgar as the character you wanted to see most in my Does This Character Do Anything series. And this kicks off a new retrospective series on older characters, with each one being voted by you, so make sure you're subscribed and watch for the polls in the community tab to be part of that discussion. And Calgar is the perfect choice as we head into the Sons of Ultramar event on December the 1st. This event lets us unlock vital Calgar shards, plus other Ultramarine and Imperial rewards through missions, event milestones, tournament arena crates, and home screen events. And outside of the Sons of Ultramar event, unlocking Calgar means you have to beat him in the final battle of the Indomitus Mirror campaign. After that, you farm his shards from the boss stage or grab them from requisition pods. But at 1 shard per day, it takes you around 3 months. For new players, I really recommend going through the grind of getting legendary characters from the campaign events, even though it does take this long to do them, because each one will usually find a worthwhile place in your roster. Now, before we deep dive into his abilities, let me tell you why Calgar is such an incredible character in Warhammer 40k lore, as this is one of my favourite origin stories. Because Marneus Calgar was not born with the name Marneus. When he first arrived on Macragge, he was one of 2 boys from Novia Thulium chosen as aspirants to the Ultramarines chapter. He trained and bled alongside another young recruit who was a close friend called Marneus. He was noble of heart and strong in spirit. During their grueling trials on the deadly moon of Thulium, the original Marneus sacrificed his life to save his friend, and this was a defining moment for the surviving aspirant. And so, to honour this ultimate act of bravery, Calgar took his fallen comrade's name as his own, vowing to live a life worthy of it. And from that day forward, he was no longer just a recruit, he was Marneus Calgar, a name that he would take to make legendary in the annals of the Imperium. Later, during his early service, he was grievously wounded in battle and nearly died, only to return even stronger through cybernetic reconstruction. His resilience in the face of death would forge a leader who would come to shape the future of Ultramar, and eventually he was appointed Chapter Master of the Ultramarines, inheriting the title from the venerable Lord Guilliman himself. In war, Calgar is a military genius, trained in the Codex Astartes. He doesn't merely fight battles, he orchestrates campaigns across entire systems. Whether holding the line against hive fleets, chaos incursions, or Xenos warbands, Calgar applies calm calculation and decisive brutality. He is also one of the few chapter masters with a seat on the Senate of Ultramar, making him both a general and a political leader. But it was during the Indomitus Crusade that Calgar made a pivotal decision. He submitted himself to the Primaris transformation, undergoing the Rubicon Primaris procedure. This process nearly killed him again, but Calgar emerged stronger than ever, a Primaris Space Marine clad in Gravis pattern armour, wielding the dual gauntlets of Ultramar, massive power fists with integrated bolters. Now he's a walking tank, capable of tearing apart monsters and chaos champions with his bare hands. And as Chapter Master of the Ultramarines, Calgar is one of the most decorated and iconic Space Marines in the Imperium of Man, a warrior of immense experience and unshakable resolve, who stands not only as the spiritual and martial heart of the Ultramarines chapter, but also as a symbol of what it means to be an Astartes, duty-bound, tactically brilliant, and utterly devoted to the Emperor. And speaking of things worthwhile, it's time for a November code, and this one, DBP Calgar, will grant you 10 Calgar character shards and 50 energy. And if you want to receive even more in-game codes, then make sure to hit that subscribe button, because 70% of you are watching without subscribing, and with a brand new code coming every 1,000 subs, that's a lot of loot being left uncollected on the battlefield. And in the meantime, if you want to earn some free blackstone to help you on your way, you can use my Refer a Friend code in-game today to get 100 free blackstone. Just note that you can only use one person's Refer a Friend code, so make sure you make the most of it. Calgar is an Imperial champion. He has a 2-hit melee power damage attack with a 40% pierce ratio, and he doesn't have a ranged attack. He also doesn't have a relic yet that we can use, and according to the fine print, we don't even know which slot he's actually going to go into yet. In terms of his equipment, I usually pick a bolt pistol with an Artificer Iron Halo and an optimal force field amplifier. And this just boosts his ability to both crit with a weapon, while also boosting his chance to block attacks. He has the Mark 10 Gravis armor trait, which means any incoming damage has to go through his armor a second time, although it doesn't apply to crits, and that just means that any normal attacks are reduced by quite a lot and makes him really tanky. He also has the Final Vengeance trait, which means that providing he isn't overkilled, he's going to take one last attack on a character in melee range. Next, we'll look at the character's melee damage, range damage, and defense. We do this by leveling the character up to be Winged Diamond 3 with level 30 skills and no weapons or equipment. This is just to equalize the playing field. Then, Castellan Creed, the character with the most average armor and traits in the game, becomes a punching bag for them to test their damage. And finally, Creed will punch them back to see their defensive skills. This is all then ranked against everyone else in the game, so let's see how they do today. Creed, are you ready for today's test? Today we have Calgar, Chapter Master of the Ultramarines.
What is this old fart doing on the battlefield? I thought we were only looking at brand new characters.
It's time for a change, Creed, and a whole new retro series of Does This Character Do Anything, all voted for by the general public.
Wow, you really must be getting desperate for content, huh?
Thanks, Creed. You always manage to keep me grounded. Calgar's melee attack does 1,534 damage, and he takes 635 damage from Creed. And so with these numbers, in terms of his own pure punching ability, he definitely is down the list as he comes in 84th position, and so you can't leave him alone to take other characters down. He needs backup, and you really need to be thinking about him as a supporting tank character. And we can see that tankiness in full effect because he comes in 9th in terms of defense, and that Mark 10 Gravis armor really pays off well and also shows again why he shouldn't be laughed at as an older character. He still scores very highly in terms of defense, and so at every point in time, you need to be thinking about where you want to fit a character in like this. Now let's talk about his skills. His passive is Rites of Battle and is in the buffing category of skills, and this simply increases the amount of damage that any adjacent friendly units deal, with Imperials getting an extra boost. Should this be prioritized as a skill over others for new players? Actually, I would say yes for this one, because it can really improve your overall damage output in the game. His active is Gauntlets of Ultramar, and this is in the damage category of skills. And this beautiful, satisfying skill sees Calgar hitting all characters within 2 hexes with a rather large bolter attack. And for anyone adjacent to him, he deals an extra bolter hit. Should this be prioritized as a skill over others for new players? No, because damage skills are not as important as spawning or healing for early level players. If we look at his Mythic Missions, you need to defeat 18 enemies in 1 turn, deal 50,000 damage in 1 turn, overkill 100 enemies, defeat 1 enemy that has the immune trait, and then deal 100,000 damage with Marneus Calgar. And the reward is an Archaeotech bolt pistol. And so the first one is easy because you just do an onslaught or legendary event, let the enemies build up around you, and use your Gauntlets of Ultramar to kill everything, which is the same principle for Mission 2 as well. But there you need your Gauntlets leveled up to something like level 48, and then to surround yourself with pretty high level onslaught enemy characters. For Missions 3 and 5, you just play the game and kill stuff, and finally for Mission 4, you need to kill a guild raid boss. And here I would just coordinate with your guild and finish off one of the smaller ones. So what do I think about his traits and skills? Well, Calgar actually hasn't received a buff since the end of 2022, and it's testament to how well he was built as a character that he hasn't needed anything else because he's still pretty relevant today. Yes, his Rites of Battle passive has seen him fall a little bit behind the power creep recently of releases like Dante and Trajan, but he's still very good for players wanting to buff their overall damage. And his Gauntlets of Ultramar is still one of the most satisfying skills in the game, whether he's just killing all of Archimatos' demon spawns or wiping out a whole wave in a legendary event. You're never going to feel let down by this. He has 2 very relevant traits as well, with his Mark 10 Gravis armor, making him an incredibly tanky champion who fits perfectly into an Isabella battle ball, and if all else fails, then he will happily land a rather firm punch to the face of an enemy with his final vengeance. And when I'm talking about an Isabella battle ball, this works by picking Calgar, Isabella, and 3 other tanks. So for example, this could be Aesoth, Brother Butchered, Trajan, and others. And then you stand Isabella in the middle of them, and she passively heals as your characters take damage. Calgar increases everyone's damage, as well as Isabella's single heal. Aesoth increases everyone's armor around him, making them absorb more damage. And the last 2 are just there to deal more damage, absorb more punches, and for Trajan specifically, do a little bit of boosting as well. And so together they can really take down even the most difficult of waves, and you'll see this come in really handy in legendary events, for example. So what modes does he fit into? Well, surprisingly, he's still relevant in so many different modes. In legendary events, he's always popping up in different battles, whether it's the Bolter battle or the Final Vengeance battle. There's always something you can use him in, but as I discussed recently, with my move to trying to push very far up the tracks without focusing on specific battles, I love to see him being part of that Isabella battle ball. In guild raids, he's fallen a little bit out of favour due to the release of Dante and Trajan and the surge of the Custodes team, but I actually still love to use him in my Ragnar multi-hit team because of the additional damage he adds to Ragnar and Karn. He's definitely not outperforming the others, but with the lack of levels I have in them, he's a good stopgap until I do level them up. In Guild Wars and Arena though, he's great in attack and defense, with his gauntlets of Ultramar being able to turn around battles that you thought were lost for sure, and he's honestly one of the most well-rounded champions out there. He does have his struggles though, especially against certain characters. For example, high pierce damage dealers who bypass his armor's second damage reduction, like Psychers with their 100% pierce ratio for example, will definitely hurt him, or critical hit specialists, since the Gravis armor doesn't apply to crits, so any of the Adeptus Sororitas like Celestine or Vindicta, or the Emperor's Children characters like Chiron or Lucius, because both have traits that boost their crit chance. And finally, ranged heavy teams that can kite him around as he has no ranged attack and is relatively slow with only 3 movement. So someone here like Tangida, who can fill the field with ranged Skitarii, are able to kite him around. So who does Calgar work well with? When we're looking to assess who a character works best with, we of course start with their own faction. And the truth is that although he does fit in here really well, he is let down by the fact that the Ultramarines are the beginner Imperial faction, and so they are both uncomplicated and lacking in a couple of areas. They don't have a faction bonus, for example, and with Certus and Varo Tigarius lacking the damage outputs of others, it's hard to recommend them as a team. And this is shown very well in faction arena battles by the fact that they need a couple of extra troops added in to even get them close to the power levels of other factions, and even with this, it's very rare I'll see an Ultramarine team in faction arena. So outside of that, he really does fit well into most teams if you're looking for a well-rounded character. Of course, his passive buffs Imperial troops more than other troops, and so he's obviously more powerful when he's surrounded by other Imperials. But in fact, if you stick him next to Trajan, then you can laugh very happily at the amount of damage he outputs, because of Trajan's legendary commander skill that buffs Calgar's gauntlets even further. So wherever you need a big slab of beef on your side, definitely think about Calgar. And my overall takeaway, which you might have guessed already, is that I love this character. He actually inspired me to get a Joytech toy of him that sits proudly on my desk, and everything that he stands for in Warhammer 40k lore fits very well with me, and in-game I can see all of that reflected in his kit. He is, without doubt, one of the best designed characters in terms of kit, and his overall look in game is just stunning. This year he has fallen behind Trajan and Dante for buffing, and so with the amount of time it takes to actually get him, I would really consider whether you think he's worth it or not. He is still one of the toughest defensive characters around, which is great if he would fit into legendary events, but as we're about to see, he doesn't fit into the current ones very well, so let's hope that he does for any newer ones being released. But either way, if you want a living monument to everything that Ultramarine stands for, then Calgar is the one for you. And so looking more closely at the legendary events, starting with the Dante event, in the Alpha track, he appears in the Power Damage battle. In the Beta track, he appears in the Max 3 Hits battle, and in the Gamma track, Imperials are not allowed, so he doesn't get to play. And that gives him a rather poor score of 110, which is underneath the 191 average score for this event. Moving to the Trajan event, in the Alpha track, he could play, but actually he doesn't appear in any battles. In the Beta track, Imperials are not allowed to play, so he doesn't appear there either, and for the Gamma track, amazingly, he also doesn't appear, and so for this event, he actually ends up with 0 points, and with the average being 195, he's one of the ones dragging that average really far down. Moving to the Lucius event, in the alpha track, he appears in the bolter damage battle. In the beta track, he appears in the max 2 hits battle, and in the gamma track, it's no Imperials, so he's not allowed to play. And so he finishes this event with 170 points, and that's just above the average of 164 for this event. And so, in the current legendary events, Calgar scores a very measly result, and that puts him way down in 96th position, which is one of the worst in the game if you look at it on paper. One thing to note here is that this is the score for these 3 events, and as they're constantly changing when new legendary characters are added, it's very possible to see these positions change a lot, so don't hang all your leveling on this one score generally. However, even if we look a little closer at Calgar's, we can see that there isn't a battle right now that he's really going to be required overtaking other characters, and instead he's just someone that's looking to fill slots and push you incredibly high through the stages as a tank generally. And he might make the difference between getting a mythic character or not. So you can be forgiven for ignoring him completely for legendary events in favour of other more useful characters currently, but think of him as your reliable workhorse rather than your star player. He's not flashy in rankings, but he's essential for constant progression up the stages as a crucial part of the Isabella Battle Ball. But what do you think of Calgar? Is he someone that you would love to own? Or if you do own him, how often do you still find him appearing in your teams? And if there are other older characters you'd love to see in this retrospective series, then just let me know in the comments below.